In the back of the 747, the impact forces were much less. Sheer luck had protected them from the flying debris. Yumi Ochiai has a broken pelvis and a fractured arm. She tells a disturbing story of what happened as she lay on the mountain, awaiting rescue, and that many more passengers survived the crash.
After the crash, I heard harsh panting and gasping noises from many people. I heard it coming from everywhere, all around me. There was a boy crying, "Mother." I clearly heard a young woman saying, "Come quickly." Suddenly, I heard a boy's voice. "Okay, I'll hang on," he said. It sounded like the voice of a boy of about school age. In the darkness, I could hear the sound of a helicopter. I couldn't see any light, but I could hear the sound, and it was quite near too. "We'll be saved," I thought, and waved frantically. But the helicopter went farther away. "Don't go," I waved desperately. "Help!" But it faded. I could no longer hear the voices of the boy or the young woman.
It's clear now that many died in the cold night air, waiting for rescue. The crash of this jumbo jet would normally be a strictly Japanese affair, but it sets aviation alarm bells ringing around the world. Only weeks earlier, an Air India 747 had gone down in the Atlantic, killing 329 people. Now another 520 dead. Was there something wrong with the 747, the world's biggest jet? Could there be some unknown design fault? There were some 600 747s flying worldwide. A problem with the plane would have grave consequences for aviation. Ron Schleid, a top investigator with America's National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, was assigned the case.
So it was a very big concern on our part about whether there was a problem with the 747, an airworthiness problem. And so we had to jump on this very quickly to learn what happened.
At the Washington headquarters of the NTSB, the chairman was extremely concerned of the potential consequences for world aviation. He wrote a personal note to his opposite number in Japan, begging him to invite the NTSB to join the investigation as guests. During the late 70s and 80s, Ron Schleid was involved with many of the major foreign investigations for the NTSB. He's familiar with the sensitivities of working with foreign governments and heads to Tokyo, where he'll meet the rest of his team, representatives from Boeing, the plane's manufacturer, and an engineer from America's Federal Aviation Administration.
When I arrived in Tokyo, the atmosphere in Japan was extremely stressful. The news media were everywhere. There was a tremendous amount of anger.
Once in Japan, Schleid found that the local Japanese police had taken over the investigation and were treating it like a crime scene, diligently observing his team's every move.
Everyone was considered suspicious. Japanese airline personnel, Boeing personnel, were considered suspicious. They weren't even allowed to go to the accident site.
Schleid had to wait for 2 days before the Japanese authorities would allow him to visit the site.
I was able to convince the Japanese to allow us to take Boeing people to the site with the stipulation that the Boeing people stuck very close to us, and we supervised them while they were on scene. They could not operate on their own.
Schleid found that to gain access to the site, the Japanese had quickly constructed helicopter landing pads.
It was an amazing sight to look up at this mountain and see what looked like wreckage from an airplane at a distance, but you could not recognize any part of an airplane. There were scores of helicopters in the air, landing and taking off every couple minutes.
Amidst the wreckage of JAL 123, Schleid found that some families of the victims had managed to scramble to the remote mountain site on foot. and build shrines to their loved ones. From above, flowers rained down on the investigators.
I recall these big white, I believe they were Chinook helicopters, flying over, and there were families aboard the helicopters looking at the accident site. They were quite high, and they were dropping flower petals down onto the accident site. The one thing that we found when we got to the accident site was that many of the passengers had a lot of time to think about the end. And they found many, many notes written on pieces of paper, anything they could get their hands on.
My darling wife, life with you has been wonderful. Our children have grown up to be people I am proud of. I never dreamed that the dinner we had last night would be our last together.
Passengers were able to think and realize that they were out of control and maybe going to crash, so they wrote notes to their loved ones and left them in the back of the seats or in their pockets.
But what could have caused this disaster? Neither the heart-rending letters nor the tangled wreckage yet yield any answer to what happened to Flight 123. Still, the main thing the investigators have to go on are the words on the plane's cockpit voice recorder, those of the plane's flight engineer who had said that door R5 was broken. They believe that the door has somehow come off in flight, crashed into the tail, and damaged the plane's flying surfaces, the horizontal stabilizer, which makes the plane go up and down, the rudder, which controls side-to-side movement. But then, a piece of news that destroys that theory totally. The door had not come off. It's found by the investigators amidst the wreckage. The flight engineer was wrong.
Right now the R5 door has broken!
The warning light on his panel led him to believe that the door had failed in flight. But the alarm may well have been set off by a short circuit in the electrical system, caused by the ceiling collapsing in the explosion. It was not a broken door that caused Flight 123 to crash. The investigators would have to look elsewhere.